Hi everyone, Amalyn here. Calista and I are very excited to present to you our new EP entitled Who Plays Debussy. For this project, I took the role of arranger and producer, and Calista was the performer. Here's the timeline of this video so that you can zoom in on the parts that you are most interested to hear about. Do stick around for the whole video though, as most of the sections are linked. Okay, let's dive in. One of the things we discussed in Foundations of Musical Discovery taught by Dr. Sim was Beethoven Reimagined by Gabriel Prokofiev. For those who don't know, Prokofiev used live electronics, sampling parts of the symphony and stitching them together with electronic loops whilst retaining the original structure. When I first heard about this work, I was quite surprised, as I always assumed that classical music wasn't something that could be remixed. I didn't dare to remix anything classical because of the high importance emphasized by classical musicians to retain the original structure of the composition and intention of the composer. Seeing that this was possible and in fact well received by the classical community opened up the idea of remixing classical music to me. When I received feedback for my analysis of Beethoven Reimagined, one of Dr. Sim's comments really stood out to me. She asked, "Do you think the remix would actually appeal to a hip-hop fan, or would it really only appeal to a niche group of classical fans who think this is cool?" Dr. Sim had the exact same question as me. As a musician and a person who likes to test her ideas, the only way that this question would be answered was to prove it myself. There you go. That's how the idea of Who Plays Debussy was formed. Now, why the Erhu? On to you, Calista.
Hi everyone, so this is Calista and I'll be sharing with you guys why we decided to use the Erhu for this Debussy album. So I think this was actually a very coincidental thing, and it actually happened after Amalyn shared with me that she was working on this project. And it was a very interesting thing because Debussy is famed for, definitely in the Western classical world, but it is rare that we hear of Chinese instruments for Debussy. So I actually thought of how Debussy was known to have a little bit of Chinese influences in his music. So I thought, what if we combine that with me playing the Erhu? And it also really aligned with my personal goal of constantly reimagining the Erhu in a modern context. So that was how it actually all came together. So the Erhu plays the role of the main melodic instrument in this album, offering a fresh palette to all our listeners.
My first reference point came when we were having our final project presentations. I recall that Fiona presented Debussy's piece Pegode. As Fiona played an excerpt of that piece, I suddenly recalled a song that I had been listening on repeat. It's by this artist called YST, who also makes lo-fi instrumentals. I loved how mellow and spacey he made the percussion and how calming the song made me feel. Debussy's Pegode brought me back these same feelings, and I knew I had to remix this piece in this style. I also referred to this other artist, namely his album Ancient Forests. His song Amongst Giants from this album is what inspired my version of Clair de Lune. What I like about this album is how he integrated Asian instruments seamlessly with a modern beat. That is what I worked towards in the album too. From there onwards, it was just a lot of listening to a variety of songs. It didn't matter who made the songs, what mattered was that he used Asian instruments and that they had a modern beat. I wanted to better understand what was already in the market. While listening to these songs, I realized the ones that bothered me the most were when the melody and the beats were not integrated together. Sometimes beats seemed like they came in as an afterthought, and other times both would be fighting for prominence in the mix. There were even some times where one of these elements was so drowned out in the background that it made me wonder why they even included it. With a better idea of what to follow and what to avoid, I started working on the album. I was trying to select pieces that I think would fit the lo-fi theme. Pegode and Clair de Lune came to me the easiest since I had a clear inspiration to refer to. Here's a short comparison of my renditions to my references mentioned earlier. For the rest of the pieces, it was more of a trial and error. Some other pieces that I tried to remix included La Mer and the prelude to The Afternoon of a Faun, but both were not satisfactory. On hindsight, I think the reason why I didn't like my mixes was because faster sections of the piece could not pick up well, as I was working with a mostly fixed tempo. Working with dissonances and chromaticism made me think very carefully about my arrangement. The wrong instrument choice could make the piece sound off. One of my favorite decisions was to use gamelan instruments in my version of Reverie. Credits to Hakim for helping me sample them. It was very befitting for Debussy as he referred to the pentatonic scale often in his pieces. This is the first time that I've collaborated with a performer as a producer. Usually it's the other way around for me, or a joint producer collaboration. For me, it was a refreshing experience as I got to learn more about the Erhu at the same time. Calista's input has also been very useful, such as advising me to write for the Zhonghu for the lower harmony of Clair de Lune. I probably would not have considered that option if I were on my own.
So during this collaborative process, Amalyn actually provided me with her arrangements of the Debussy works, and then we tried them out together in the recording studio. And it was not the easiest process, but I am very glad it was a very good learning opportunity for me, exploring a new genre of music as well.
I've learned a lot from this production and release. I spent a lot of time thinking during the production stage on how I should balance the expectations from the two genres. For example, I had to reduce the dynamics of the Erhu at certain parts in order for it to not duck beneath the mix. Though it results in less expression, it makes the album sound more uniform. I had many sources of feedback while mixing, which confused me as they would sometimes be clashing. For example, one source said that more pre-delay was needed in the reverb to create more space, while another source said to reduce the pre-delay to avoid muddying the sound of the other instruments. I decided to take the former advice because I personally preferred that sound. From there, I've learned how to take feedback in more selectively and how to stick to my own intuition when needed. Releasing this album independently meant that I had to personally source artists for album artwork and curators for playlist distributions. Though this is more time-consuming, I enjoy this process as we get full artistic control as to how our album will be viewed. Overall, this album has been very fulfilling for us to create. Thank you for listening, and please stream our album here.